Yeah. On the Ryan Kevin Morning Show with Wanda Smith, People Station V103. Wrapping up with the mayor right now. Before you get out of here, I want to talk about what's going to happen on March 17th when the residents have a chance to vote on improving some sidewalks, some roads and bridges, etc. Talk about the infrastructure bond.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Ryan and Wanda. Well, we have about a $900 million infrastructure bond. And this week, the Atlanta Council voted unanimously, 12-0, to allow us to spend up to $250 million to repair our roads, streets, sidewalks, to finally get our traffic lights synchronized. So I just wanted to thank the Atlanta City Council for showing amazing leadership, understanding the need, and putting us in a position to have a referendum in March. I want to be very clear. This will not cause your property taxes to go up. So the city is in strong enough financial condition to absorb this debt, to make these improvements without charging the people of Atlanta more for it. So I just wanted to tell folks to be on the lookout. We're going to have a big public conversation around the infrastructure bond, but I really wanted to thank the Atlanta City Council for their leadership.
Went down, okay, check down this. Benz, check. Streetcar, check. Hawks, check. Bond. Underground. Fire chief. And bully. Okay, see you later, bro.
You got everything?
I got it.
Bye-bye, Atlanta. Bye-bye, Ryan. Bye-bye, Wanda.
Johnny,
Bye-bye, 11 right now. We got to look at traffic right now. I got it down, man.
Man.
9:44 right now. It is the Ryan Kevin Morning Show with Wanda Smith, People Station V103. We have got to we got a phone call here. Caesar Mitchell is on the line from the Atlanta City Council. Good morning, Caesar. We have you on the air.
Yes, good morning, Ryan. How are you doing?
I'm good.
I was just calling in. I understand there were some comments made earlier today that were attacking me, or at least making some comments about my ability to govern, and more importantly, my recommendation that we work together to get this issue resolved. And I was just very concerned to hear those comments. And so I just want to call in and make it very clear for the record and for the people that are listening that we've got to get this issue between the City of Atlanta and APS related to the Beltline resolved. And my efforts are directed at doing that. And I think there were some accusations made by the mayor that I want to just write a check to the Atlanta Public Schools for the amount that the city owes pursuant to the current contract, and that is not true. What my intent is to get APS to the table to refashion this agreement, something that after 2 years of doing nothing on this issue has just not happened.
No, that's not true. There's been a lot done. You've been briefed on the negotiations between the City of Atlanta and APS. This is Kasim. I did say that. You've been briefed on the negotiations. You're well aware that we've had multiple meetings trying to resolve it. And the op-ed that you wrote in Maria's supporters piece does say that you wanted to write a check for $13.7 million. So it's not an attack. It's in your own op-ed.
Mr. Mayor, what it says, and if you go back and read it, what it says.
I read it. It's right here.
No, what it says, and and I don't want to get into this back and forth. But
well, let's get into it. If you have a document, let's get into a back and forth.
Well, let's go ahead and get into it.
Okay, let's go.
Because if you're going to see things that are not true, then we do need to get into it.
Go ahead, let's go. I'm right here.
What I said is that we have an obligation to make a payment based upon the contract that's out there. However,
you said it was undisputed.
However, we're not going to make a payment until we get a new agreement, and that's something you and I have both agreed upon.
We do agree about that.
So my proposal really is designed to help you get to the finish line. That is getting APS to the table to renegotiate an agreement.
APS is already.
For you to come.
APS has already been. We've been negotiating to get an agreement.
Well, they're not at a point right now, Mr. Mayor.
So when we were together on Wednesday or Thursday,
all the APS is saying right now.
You could have said that.
All the APS is saying right now is that they want to check. And you and I both know they got to get off of that.
And I've made it very clear they're not going to get a check.
But yeah, you take no wait.
They're not going to get a check.
Conversations on a very personal level, and I'm not.
No, I didn't. I didn't make it personal. I said they're not going to get a check.
About you, my op-ed actually challenged APS to come to the table and renegotiate this agreement.
No, it didn't. It took a position. No, it didn't. It took a position that spends 10% of the city's general fund. That's what you did. You said to take $13.7 million. No, Ryan, he said take $13.7 million out of the general fund, 10% of the general fund. That's what you said.
All right, Caesar, let me let you, because I want people to understand. We have Atlanta City Council President Caesar Mitchell on the phone, along with Mayor Kasim Reedy, who was in the studio, comes in every month. Caesar, because people are listening, they're trying to figure out what is going on.
Right.
What is it that you are disputing that the mayor said?
Here's what I am recommending. And this is what I recommended.
No, Caesar, I'm asking you, what is it that you are disputing that the mayor said?
The mayor is saying that I just want to flat out write a check, and that is not true. What I am recommending is that we show good faith, that we understand that we have obligations under the contract that was written and negotiated between the city and APS to make certain things. However, because the economic conditions have changed, it is not realistic to move forward under this agreement. We have got to do a new agreement. But we understand,
we agree on that
and we understand how important it is to act in good faith. But we will consider making payments to you, as the legislature says, up to the amount currently past due. However, before we do that, before we cut any kind of check, we're going to have to get this agreement refactored.
Yeah, and so
that is what my proposal is.
And so where we disagree about is $13.8 million coming out of the general fund. So that's where our disagreement is, and so that's why you modified your agreement. So we disagreed on that.
Coming up with an ordinance that would pull it from the sale of real estate.
That's right. That was my recommendation.
And here's the deal. At the end of the day, we have a $140 million reserve.
It's $142 million.
$142 million
at the end of the year with an unqualified audit.
And it is unquestioned that we will have that because of the work you and I have done together.
That's true.
And because of legislation we passed many years ago in 2009 when you were in the state legislature to ensure that we would have.
You know what? That's baloney. Let me tell you. No, that's baloney. Okay. Let me tell you why it's baloney. The only thing that the tax increases that were passed in 2009 did was to cover the hole for the tax cuts that were sent back over multiple years. So don't try. So the legislation certainly provided guidance for the future, and we did accomplish a great deal together. But the fact of the matter is that the tax increase that was passed before I became mayor filled a hole from previous tax millage rollbacks. So nobody did my administration a favor. And if you look at the Bain report, it says
literally has a charter amendment to the city.
Absolutely.
That requires us to put a certain amount of money in reserve. We did that in 2009.
Yeah, that's fair.
We did that in 2009.
That
required us to build our reserve, and that's what we've done. You and I are working together with the council.
Yes, I agree with that.
And let's just be really, really candid about this.
Let's be candid.
I mean, let's be candid. If we're going to be serious about getting this deal done, we got to work together. And from my perspective, you and I both agree that this agreement has got to get redrafted.
And so, Caesar, that's why.
Wait. The intent of my op-ed, as well as the legislation that I asked to be introduced, is to bring APS to the table, take this issue of these past payments that are due off the table, and say, let's focus on refashioning the agreement. And nowhere have I said, just cut them a check, as you have mischaracterized my intent over the last couple of days.
But Caesar, I want to ask you this question, because this is what is making all the fodder, which is making all the press this morning, which is making all the sound bites. You are accusing the mayor of being a bully. What did you mean by calling him a bully?
I did not call him a bully. Jonathan Shapiro from WABE asked me, is the mayor acting like a bully? And I said, what's the difference between acting like a bully and being a bully? And I was expecting him to give me an answer. And he said, are you calling the mayor a bully? And what I said specifically is that I'm not saying that. I'm not going to run around. I can just flat out say, wait a minute. I don't have to call somebody a bully. I can deal with bullies. I'm not going to call nobody a bully and run and cry and say, that ain't me. That ain't where I'm from. I was born in this city, raised in this city, educated in APS, I'm going to run around crying about somebody being a bully. I'm going to deal with it. And I'm going to come back when someone mischaracterizes what I say, and I'm going to challenge it.
Okay.
And that's
So you never said that?
Yeah, no, I say, let me repeat myself again.
Okay.
Ryan Shapiro, or whoever maybe said, are you saying, do you think the mayor's acting like a bully? I looked him in the eye, and I said, what's the difference between acting like a bully and being a bully? He said, are you saying the mayor's? I said, no, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
So and I don't want to get sidetracked on that, as we've gotten sidetracked on all these other crazy personal statements that are being made about me. I wanted to stay focused on getting this deal done.
Wait a minute.
That's what I wanted to do.
Caesar, let the mayor say
so
his part.
there are a few things. First of all, we were together before New Year's, so everything you put in the iPad, you could have said to me directly. We are well down the road on the negotiations with APS. You know exactly what's going on because you have a close relationship with the leader of their board. The iPad that you wrote over the weekend definitely said to pull $13.7 million from our reserves, which is almost 10% of the reserves that we have built working together. That's where we have the disagreement. So our disagreements are twofold. One, I don't believe that we should use $13.7 million from reserves to pay a debt where there is a clear dispute. So that's why your legislation was modified. That's number one. Second of all, my position is that if you want to work cooperatively, you can talk to me and I can talk to you at any time. I don't need an op-ed to work cooperatively with you. And the point I'm making is if you want to commute through op-eds or blogs, we can communicate in that fashion. And so what I did was to respond to the proposal that was written in the op-ed in your own writing and to say we should not pull $13.7 million from reserves. The other point that's far more important is all of this energy is being put into these Beltline payments, which are $6.8 million a year. And nobody is having a conversation about the fact that APS's pension is only 18% funded, Ryan. It is only 18% funded. So if folks really want to have a conversation about saving the APS school system and children, then you have to talk about a pension system that is moving towards insolvency. Third, the other point that I've made is when the APS school system was on the verge of losing its accreditation, I was the person who was leading that effort. So if you're going to put in an op-ed or have a conversation in the op-ed, have a full conversation. So that's all I'm saying today.
I get it. I respect what you're saying, what you're saying. But Mr. Mayor, let me just say this. In my op-ed, I was not attacking you. I was challenging all of us to get this situation resolved. And really, I expected a very negative response from APS because what I said in my op-ed, if you go farther in the op-ed, is that I caution APS not to look at this offer to address the payment issue that they're so focused on as a capitulation because there's so many other critical issues that we've got to address, and they have to be addressed in a refashioned agreement. And I was very clear in my op-ed. It was not directed at you. It was not challenging you. It was not belittling you, and I hate that you took that interpretation from my op-ed. What I am trying to do is to help move this to a conclusion and do it in a way that I really felt would be helpful to you in the negotiation. Now, bringing up the reserves was a way of showing a very strong commitment to addressing what is an obligation that arguably is on the table that we have if you look at the agreement as it is.
Yeah, but we also have a payment that we made.
I'll let you speak. My approach is to be collaborative about this and not to put and back APS in the corner. So I don't want to get into a conversation about their pension. I don't want to get into a conversation about their cheating scandal. I don't want to get into a conversation about these other things because we ultimately, you and I, and the members of the council have to work with them in the future to help them address those issues.
But Council President, bringing up the pension isn't an attack on APS. It's a massive financial problem. It's a policy problem.
No.
It absolutely should be on the table. An 18% funded pension in this day and age, when we look at what's happened in Detroit, where they had to go into bankruptcy because of their pension obligations, it certainly should be on the table.
On the table, the conversation about an obligation that the city has under an agreement, and our need to get it, and our need.
But you're ignoring the payments that the city already made to APS.
I'm not ignoring. In fact, I said in my op-ed as well that we cannot ignore, and APS cannot ignore the fact that we have made $26+ million payment already to them. That was an unexpected payment we made pursuant to the Supreme Court case, and we cannot ignore that.
Well, but Caesar, if that's the case, then we don't owe them $13.7 million.
But I said that in the op-ed. But their argument, and let me just say a couple more things, and we can kind of put a pause on it, and you and I can meet directly, because you and I actually agree on this. But let me say this. First of all, they are disputing whether or not, based upon the Supreme Court finding, whether or not that $26 million should be counted. In my debates with the chairman of the school board that we've had over and over and over again for months, I said, we cannot. When I convened the city council and the board last year, 6-7 months ago, to elevate the importance of this issue, I said we cannot ignore that amount that has been paid, even though you're saying legally they don't have to acknowledge it. We know that just doesn't make sense when you're talking about dollars and cents. And so I've said that, and I've been very clear about that. And then finally, at the end of the day, we have got to figure out how to move from this idea of just cutting them a check with these two $6.75 million installments that we owe them, to understanding that the partnership is a much broader proposition, and then we've got to redo the agreement. That is where I am, and that's where I've been. So I'm really, really big and unfortunate. I'm really, really not happy about the fact that you're characterizing my intent as to just cut them a check, and that's not what I want.
Well, first of all, I'm not characterizing anything. I read your op-ed piece. I read your op-ed piece.
Caesar,
hold on.
Caesar,
you just went for 2 minutes,
yeah.
So I'm not characterizing anything. What I did was I read your op-ed, and it says pull $3.7 million from the general fund, which is 10% almost of what we've built up. And I disagree, not as an attack, but from a policy standpoint, that you can have a pension system that's 18% funded while you're making a message about the solvency of the APS system and it not be a part of the conversation. I also believe, as the chief executive officer of the city of Atlanta, that a $26 million payment that the city made to APS has to be accounted for before they get a check from us for anything. If you send in a payment on a car, and then they tell you they want another car payment, and you say, but you're not counting the payments I made on my car note, you would just want proof of what happened to the $26 million that I paid. And so I'm not cutting them a check for a dime until we resolve the issue of the $26 million in payments. And that's a reasonable position to take. You and I have a different position.
Caesar, we want to thank you for calling in this morning, and thanks to the mayor for hanging around. Ramona is up next.
Yes.
And this is why this
We're
is
the
your radio
People's
station.
The voice of the city.
That's
Voice
right.
of the city, man. People Station
That's
is
right.
B103. Jim Basile has a look at traffic.
Oh, man. I'll tell you what. That's great radio there, folks.